Blood moon envelopes. Jialing is closed, and the divine tree reaches the sky. Standing on the dome, Fang Yuan stuffed the soul power fruit condensed from devouring all life into his mouth. Looking down at Tang San, who had achieved the Shura God and had a murderous aura, he let out a sneer. The only gravel is not half as good as me. Daily stable 10,000 word update, don't lick Tang San, don't follow the group, don't enter the martial soul hall, without a divine throne, 7 exams to collect wool, aspiring to become the 6 paths, and planting the entire Douluo world with divine trees. Keywords of the novel. Starting from Douluo, planting the divine tree without a pop-up window. Starting from Douluo, planting the divine tree. TXT complete collection download. Starting from Douluo, planting the divine tree latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Martial Soul Awakening. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Martial Soul Awakening Tiendo Empire, Emperor Soul Village. Martial Soul Hall. A handsome young man wearing a white outfit and a black cloak, with a sword eyebrow star-like appearance, was looking helpless and frowning, awakening his martial soul to the young people in front of him. No soul power. No soul power. Suyintao looked at Fang Yuan in front of him with a surprised expression on his face. This is a very small kid, with a certain appearance of about 5 or 6 years old. Due to his young age, his appearance looks incredibly white, tender, and cute. The only difference was that beneath the jet black hair, a pair of crimson eyes appeared at this moment. Eyes. Red eyes. This martial soul seems to have never appeared before. Is it a mutated martial soul? Su Yintao's face was full of surprise, and he looked at Fang Yuan who was a bit confused in front of him. His attitude instantly changed from before. He showed a gentle smile, but the smile after the possession of the lone wolf martial soul was really unattractive. The other children beside him were even nervous by this smile, and some even cried. Come on, little one, try to control the martial soul with your mind and put it away first. Su Yintao gently took out a blue crystal ball and handed it to Fang Yuan, saying, let's test our soul power. Okay. Fang Yuan blinked and, following Su Yintao's instructions, controlled the crimson eyes that appeared in his eyes, easily retracting them into his body. Fingers and arms. At the same time, Fang Yuan also discovered that with the awakening of his martial soul, an inexplicable force emerged within him, hovering within him. Accompanied by placing his hands on the crystal ball. Fang Yuan couldn't help but tremble for a moment. The energy in his body was like water in a dam, finding the gate and surging out, constantly rushing towards the crystal ball. Glory bursts forth. This is. Su Yintao suddenly widened his eyes. After the boy in front of him awakened his special eye martial soul, he already had a guess in his heart. This kid's mutated martial soul looks extraordinary, and his eyes seem to have some special charm, extremely attractive. Therefore, Su Yintao has already estimated Fang Yuan's soul power in his heart. A conservative level of 4 or 5 may even be a genius at level 6 or 7. But at this moment the blue crystal in Fang Yuan's palm kept shining, almost in the blink of an eye, and the crystal ball became like a brilliant sapphire, shining brightly. Innate full soul power. Su Yintao couldn't help but look at the crystal ball blooming with blue light. He never expected to encounter an innate soul power in such a small mountain village. As the main leader, Fang Yuan was equally excited in his heart. He had already regained his senses from the strange feeling of awakening his martial soul. As a traveler, since arriving in this world 6 years ago and becoming aware of it, it is the Douluo continent he has seen in his previous life. Especially next to the village where he was born, there is a village called Xinghun Village, and there is also a little brat named Tang San who is about his age in the village. Excited, nervous, worried, fearful, he quickly regained his senses from the initial maneuver and became somewhat anxious. Will I awaken a trash martial soul? Where should I go in the future? Nima's, System Master, where are you? Although he is a time traveler and does have some knowledge of the plot, he has not mastered any Tang sect secrets like Tang San, nor has he been accompanied by the grandpa system. Moreover, as an orphan, if it weren't for the adoption of the village chief, he might have already died young. The overlapping of various factors not only wiped out Fang Yuan's pride as a traveler in his heart, but also caused him to experience extreme panic and lack of confidence in the future. At this moment, Fang Yuan's heart finally stabilized slightly. Congenital soul power, combined with this inexplicably familiar martial soul, my future should be somewhat secure, right? And Fang Yuan instinctively shook his left hand. Little brother, what's your name? Su Yuntao squatted half, looking at Fang Yuan with a smile on his face. Even his name changed. Fang Yuan, my name is Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan, a great name. Su Yuntao's face was full of smiles, and he even looked at Fang Yuan with some flattery. Brother Fang Yuan, innate full soul power is a rare genius in 100 years. Coupled with your mutated martial soul, your future is definitely limitless. Would you be willing to join the Martial Soul Hall? As long as you join our Martial Soul Hall and study in the Martial Soul Academy, with your qualifications, you will definitely receive the maximum resource tilt from our Martial Soul Hall. The monthly subsidy is the maximum amount. And, I can even take you directly. No, I can have our bishop personally take you to find the most suitable soul beast for you and gather your first soul ring. After speaking, Su Yuntao looked at Fang Yuan with a hopeful expression on his face. Fang Yuan had a hint of youthful innocence and confusion on his face, but deep down he began to ponder. He is an orphan, helpless and helpless. If it weren't for the adoption of the old village chief, he would have died young. After finally recovering and becoming familiar with the world, he also began to make some efforts. Begging for the appearance of the system god, always walking around the back mountain or lake, hoping to discover some peerless secrets or the treasures of top-notch experts. Even Fang Yuan is prepared to establish a good relationship with Tang San and prepare for the future in the name of his fellow villagers. But things didn't go as planned. Even though Fang Yuan's persistent thirst system, such as the old grandfather, has not appeared until today when his martial soul awakens. What kind of divine skills secret script, the strong have no farts left behind, and even one time while wandering by the river, my feet slipped and I almost fell into the river and drowned similarly. Perhaps it is due to the personality of Tang San, combined with the living environment. Even though Fang Yuan initially had the idea of building a good relationship with Tang San. Even ran to the neighboring village several times to run into Tang San. But the fact is that in recent years, he hasn't even met Tang San a few times. Even if he did, at most he would just say hello, and the two of them had no intersection. It can be said that almost all the things that Fang Yuan has been hoping for in his heart in recent years have not succeeded, all of them have failed. My relationship with Tang San is just average. Even if we can really go to Notting College together, will we definitely be able to establish bonds during our student days in the future? And Tang San's personality. That guy is not a little kid, but a heart-wrenching guy. My previous encounters may have already stirred up that young man's cautious heart. If he were to find out that he approached him with such a strong purpose in the future, he might not have a way to die. Moreover, in terms of current development, resource supply, and future growth environment, I need to ask Grandpa or. Fang Yuan looked at Su Yuntao and whispered, wherever Grandpa asks me to go, I will go. Su Yuntao was momentarily taken aback, and then he was overjoyed. Okay. Newcomer's new book, cute new seeking support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Twin Martial Souls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Twin Martial Souls. Xiao Yuan, show it to Grandpa quickly. Outside the Martial Soul Hall, or, who had been waiting early, hugged Fang Yuan with joy on his face and said, have you really become a soul master? I'm not a soul master yet. Fang Yuan scratched his head, revealing a hint of silly laughter. No, Brother Fang Yuan has a rare innate full soul power in 100 years. As long as he obtains a soul ring, he becomes an official soul master. Su Yuntao followed behind Fang Yuan and said with a smile, moreover, I would like to extend an invitation to Fang Yuan. As long as Fang Yuan enters our martial soul hall, I will have the bishop of the Nodding Branch Hall personally take him to obtain the soul ring. Okay. Or's face was full of smiles, and his old face was almost squeezed like a chrysanthemum, extremely excited. Innate full soul power. That's innate soul power. How many years have passed, and finally, another soul master has emerged from our Emperor Soul Village, and he is also a soul master with innate full soul power. You should know that Emperor Soul Village has been competing with the neighboring Holy Soul Village for a long time. Originally, there was a Soul Emperor in Emperor Soul Village, which made it extremely arrogant for a while. Who would have thought that not long after the neighboring Holy Soul Village, a Soul Saint appeared and took off directly from the spot. He even changed his name to Holy Soul Village and openly suppressed one end of their Emperor Soul Village. Although the hearts of the people in Emperor Soul Village were troubled, their own Soul Emperor could not compare to their Soul Saint. Helpless, they could only endure with their heads down. And now, their Emperor Soul Village has finally produced another Soul Master, who is also his grandson, with innate soul power. I'm finally going to vent my anger. Or village chief, I don't know little brother Fang Yuan. Everything is arranged by Master War Soul. Or smiled happily, and upon hearing such words, Su Yuntao couldn't help but smile. Great, as long as brother Fang Yuan joins our martial soul hall, with his qualifications, his future prospects will definitely be limitless. Soul Holy Soul Douluo, even the legendary title Douluo, is not a problem. Title Douluo. Fang Yuan could clearly feel Or's breathing becoming slightly heavier and his expression excited. Firstly, everything is arranged by Master Zhan Soul. I listened to my grandfather. Good. Su Yuntao laughed heartily and rubbed Fang Yuan's hair, saying, since that's the case, should Fang Yuan come directly to the Martial Soul Academy with me, or this? Fang looked at Or from a distance, his attitude was self-evident. It's okay, after all, we have to separate ourselves from the countryside, and it's normal to feel a bit reluctant. Su Yuntao waved his hand and smiled, alright, I'll report back to the branch hall first. I think it won't be long before the bishop personally comes over and takes you to obtain your first soul ring. At that time, we will take you to the Martial Soul Academy and study hard. How about that? Okay. By the way. Seemingly thinking of something, Su Yuntao smiled and took out a token from the Martial Soul Hall and a money bag from his pocket, stuffing them into Fang Yuan's hand. This is a little bit of my savings over the years. Don't refuse. After you arrive at the Martial Soul Academy, there will be many places where you will need it, which can be considered a small token of my gratitude. Without waiting for Fang Yuan to say something to Our, Su Yuntao had already jumped a few times and turned around to leave. Grandpa, this. Or looked at the token and money bag in Fang Yuan's palm with emotion on his face, shook his head, and said, you can accept it. Our Emperor Soul Village is a niche place where Master War Soul can come every year and never give up on us. This is already a blessing. Now, considering the economic situation of our Emperor Soul Village, Master War Soul is really a good person. Or returned to the village with Fang Yuan, feeling very happy all the way. If it weren't for Fang Yuan's slight restraint, Or would have even had to beat drums and gongs inside and outside the village, and the whole village would have celebrated. However, even so, Or still put Fang Yuan out in front of everyone, with a smile on his face and full of pride. How do you know that my little grandson Fang Yuan has soul power and has already been specially summoned by the Martial Soul Hall? That conspicuous appearance made Fang Yuan feel helpless for a moment. By the time Fang Yuan returned home, the sky had become gloomy. After having a casual meal, Fang Yuan quickly locked himself in the house and checked his martial soul. He looked at the mirror on the table, his eyes slightly closed. In the next moment, a pair of crimson single-hooked jade riding wheel eyes had already appeared in his eye sockets, spinning and gurgling. Indeed, it's riding wheel eyes. As a traveler, Fang Yuan is naturally very familiar with the popular cheat in the previous life of a migrant worker's manga, Shuluan Eye. As Xiaohe Ju seeks his mother, Wutsuan Wudo is the core of the Eye legend, and the power of the wheel eye is beyond doubt. The Sharingan is the core bloodline of the Uchiha clan. Generally, those who awaken to the Sharingan are usually single-hooked jade Sharingans. However, the single Goyu Sharingan is only the initial stage of Sharingan writing. After this, there are also double Goyu, three Goyu, kaleidoscope, eternal eye, and even the legendary immortal eye, which holds the power to control life and death. Fang Yuan could clearly feel that although his martial soul had awakened, he was still in an extremely young stage, and even the basic insight that Shangoyu's Sharingan should possess had not been demonstrated. His vision had only increased, and he saw things slightly more clearly. Can it be said that the reason why I did not awaken the insight of Dan Goyu's Sharingan is because I did not obtain the soul ring? Very likely. Tang San in the original work was unable to break through the second level of Shentian Gong because he did not obtain a soul ring. So his Sharingan is unable to unleash his power, which is likely also the reason. Fang Yuan had a guess in his heart. After thinking for a moment, his eyes closed, and the Sharingan was inserted into his body, and his eyes returned to normal black. But he didn't rest or start practicing, instead he lifted his left hand. The soul power inside the body was once again activated, and an emerald green color containing an extremely strong breath of life immediately permeated. The next second, a verdant branch sprout appeared out of nowhere, swaying in Fang Yuan's left palm. The tender buds on that branch are extremely small, and their appearance looks extremely ordinary, just like the sprouts of a newborn tree, incredibly delicate and fragile. But the breath of life that rushed towards us made us feel like a spring breeze, feeling relaxed and happy. This is trees. Fang Yuan suddenly widened his eyes, filled with astonishment. If it were just a simple tree, he wouldn't be so surprised, but don't forget his first martial soul. Right will eyes. The condition for the appearance of twin martial souls is two martial souls with similar qualities. In the original work, Senku is the owner of the twin martial souls. His two martial souls are the Emperor of Blue-Silver Grass, the Blue-Silver Emperor, and the world's first weapon, the Haotian Hammer. Only in this way can the situation of one body with two martial souls appear. And the tree martial soul that can appear on the body at the same time as the Sharingan, comparable to the Sharingan, it should be the only one left. The power of Mu-Dun. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Visitors from the Martial Soul Hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Visitors from the Martial Soul Hall. The existence of Mu-Dun is undoubtedly an unexpected joy for Fang Yuan. Although the power of the Sharingan is powerful, it cannot be compared to Mu-Dun until it reaches the most ultimate Sharingan. Not to mention, Fang Yuan is only single Goyu now. For a moment, Fang Yuan even had the idea of directly transitioning to Mu-Dun. No, hold on. Fang Yuan shook his head and threw the unrealistic images of the future out of his mind. I have already exposed my Sharingan. If I were to switch to Mu-Dun, wouldn't I just reveal the secret of having a twin martial soul? The way this world treats geniuses is not so friendly. Even if he joins the Martial Soul Hall, he is only a commoner after all. Although the Martial Soul Hall has a good attitude towards the common people, as the saying goes, Pifu is innocent and innocent. As an ordinary commoner, he possesses the decisive posture of twin martial souls, which inevitably causes some people to feel unbalanced. At that time, various troubles will surely come one after another. Besides, although Mu-Dun is well known, it may not necessarily be invincible. You should know that the reason why Mu Dun has such great fame is purely because of the first Hokage, the god of ninjas, who fought between the thousand-handed pillars. Otherwise, look at Yamato. As the owner of Mu Dun, besides being the best in greening the world, Yamato's actual combat power may not have reached the level of one card. If the Mu Dun it awakens is the Yamato version, not the first-generation version, wouldn't it be sent directly? So, for the sake of safety, Fang Yuan should first cultivate the Sharingan, fill up the soul rings of the Sharingan, and then go to Mu Dun. In that case, the soul ring of Fang Yuan's Mu Dun's martial soul will be at least 10,000 grade other. At that time, with the blessing of 9-10,000 or even 100,000 year soul rings, Mu Dun at that time would be the true and authentic Mu Dun. Then add the power of riding Will Eyes. As soon as Fang Yuan thought of his future of driving Gouda and riding the giant Buddha, he felt a surge of excitement in his heart, and it took him a while to put down his patience. Even so, Fang Yuan remained extremely excited and didn't sleep well all night. When the rooster crowed and the morning light was faint, the sound of knocking on the door startled Fang Yuan. "Xiao Yuan, the war soul master and the bishop are here. Come out quickly." Fang Yuan heard the call and quickly got up, opening the door. The dilapidated house was now crowded with people. In addition to the village chief Grandpa Hour and Su Yuntao, there was also a mature woman in a luxurious robe, around 30 years old, and several guards. That woman's face is like autumn water, with a charm that even wearing a robe can make people feel her exquisite and graceful figure. However, although this woman is mature and beautiful, the aura emanating from her body is even stronger than Su Yuntao's. It seems that she is the bishop in Su Yuntao's mouth. Fang Yuan's gaze swept by, and he had a clear idea in his heart. He knew that his innate soul power was bound to receive the attention of the martial soul hall, but he never expected it to come so soon. He originally wanted to go to the neighboring village and see how Tang San was doing. After all, if I join the martial soul hall, I will definitely have to confront Tang San. Although I have just awakened my martial soul, I pose no threat to Tang San now. But Fang Yuan still wants to take a glance and give his heart some peace of mind. However, it's also good to obtain the soul ring earlier and study the Sharingan earlier. Seeing Fang Yuan come out, the beautiful bishop immediately looked up and down at Fang Yuan, and the more he looked, the more his eyes lit up. From the aura of soul power, it is indeed innate full soul power. "Little one, release your martial soul and show it to me." This. Fang Yuan hesitated and his gaze fell on Su Yuntao and Hour. "Don't be so reserved, little brother Fang Yuan. This is the bishop of our Nodding City Soul Hall branch, Lord Xia. She is a soul king at level 53. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone around showed a respectful expression. Level 53, this is a top-level powerhouse. I see, it's impolite, Your Highness. Fang Yuan scratched his head and showed a simple smile. His eyes closed and opened, and a pair of crimson riding wheel eyes had already appeared in his eyes. Her special eyes left Xia slightly stunned. Upon closer examination, Xia showed a joyful and satisfied expression. It is indeed a special martial soul that I have never seen before, coupled with my innate full soul power, the little one's future is limitless. With the recognition of the bishop, who was a powerful soul king, Or's lips were almost laughing at the back of his head. Fang Yuan also showed a simple smile and scratched his head. Don't delay, I will take you to the Star Forest later to hunt soul beasts and obtain the first soul ring. By the way, this is for you. Xia took out a book from the storage soul guide she carried with her and handed it to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan took it, with a curious expression on his face. This is the basic meditation idea, a method used to refine, cultivate, and enhance soul power. You are born with full soul power and have reached the upper limit of your level, but it's okay. After you absorb the first soul ring, you can practice according to the above method. Upon hearing this, Fang Yuan was overjoyed and said, Thank you very much, Sister Xia. Last night when his martial soul awakened, he was extremely excited and couldn't sleep well all night. I want to practice, but I feel like a headless fly with no way to start. Now that there is a specialized cultivation method, Fang Yuan naturally feels happy in his heart. A sound of Sister Xia frightened Su Yuntao on the side, and the guards behind him trembled suddenly. However, Xia Fei did not feel disrespectful, but instead smiled and cheered loudly. Fang Yuan, who possesses innate soul power, as long as he can grow up smoothly, he must be a soul Douluo, or even a Douluo-level powerhouse. Although she is the bishop of the martial soul hall, she is just a soul king in her 50s, and she is already in her 30s. Her achievements in this life are just like this. And now, she is called sister by someone who will become a soul Douluo in the future, or even be titled Douluo. In fact, Xia's heart has already bloomed with joy. The little one's mouth is so sweet, it's not too late. So let's go now. Everything is up to Sister Xia. Fang Yuan's respectful attitude even brought joy to Xia's heart, and even led Fang Yuan onto her carriage. And Su Yuntao was also very sensible. After bowing his hand to Or, he took the initiative to set up a carriage and began to rush towards the starry forest. The bishop's carriage is very different, and sitting on it, Fang Yuan doesn't even feel much turbulence. After chatting with Xia for a few moments, Fang Yuan began to flip through the meditation practice method and even began to practice it tentatively according to the description above. Fang Yuan's diligent attitude towards cultivation has made Xia more satisfied. With such talent, how can one work so hard? As long as such a genius can grow up smoothly, he will definitely have a place in the top players of the future mainland. When we arrive at the Martial Soul Academy, we must talk to those teachers carefully and let them teach us well, Xia pondered in her heart. As she watched Fang Yuan enter the cultivation state, Xia nodded with a smile on her face, waved her hand, and used her soul power to isolate the noise from the outside world, allowing Fang Yuan to practice with more peace of mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Future Vision, Entering the Starry Forest for the First Time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Future Vision, Entering the Starry Forest for the First Time. Emperor Soul Village is not far from the Star Do Forest, and with Su Yuntao, the great soul master, driving, the journey can be said to be smooth and unobstructed. Before long, everyone arrived at the outskirts of the Star Forest. Little one, it's time to go somewhere. Xia's gentle call made Fang Yuan withdraw from his cultivation state. The soul power fluctuates, and even a pair of eyes become sparkling under the influence of soul power. The feeling of cultivation is extremely comfortable, as if one has been immersed in warm hot spring water without feeling tired at all. No wonder in previous life novels, those people liked to use meditation as a substitute for sleep. After getting off the carriage, Su Yuntao went to register and the three of them walked together towards the Starry Forest. The Star Forest is one of the three most famous gathering places for soul beasts on the Douluo continent, with an area almost equal to the land area of the Barak Kingdom. The entire Star Forest spans across the borders of the Heavenly Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire, with 2/5 located in the Heavenly Do Empire and the remaining 3/5 in the Star Luo Empire, hence the name, Star Do. The environment in the Starry Forest is extremely complex. It is not only a primitive forest, but also has special environments such as wetlands and swamps. And among them, the biological soul beasts are also extremely powerful, especially in the deep areas of the Star Do Forest, almost all of which are eternal soul beasts. Even the legendary 100,000-year soul beasts have many. However, what Fang Yuan wants to obtain is only the first soul ring, so he naturally doesn't need to go too deep. He only needs to search for suitable soul beasts in the outer area of the Star Do Forest. Little one, have you figured out your first soul ring? Do you want any soul beasts? Xia asked. Fang Yuan shook his head. He knew nothing about soul beasts, only those with names and surnames in the original work, such as mandala snakes and human-faced magic spiders. As for the rest, where did he know? Sister Xia, what kind of soul beast do you think I should choose as my first soul ring? Good question. Xia chuckled lightly and said, when we choose soul rings, we need to pay attention to 2 points. First, the characteristics of martial souls, and second, the future development direction. Although I have never seen your martial soul before, most of our martial souls are external, but your martial soul is your eyes, as if you are yourself. In that case, let's start from the perspective of the eyes. Fang Yuan nodded secretly. At Douluo, there was no concept of a physical martial soul, and the bishop in front of him could think of it. Obviously, it was not just a bag of wine and rice, but also a vase. As an indispensable part of our human body, the biggest feature of our eyes is that they bring us light and help us gain insight into the world. Your martial soul is not like an ordinary weapon soul or beast soul. It seems to have no aggression and weak defense, but when I saw your eyes, I felt a sense of confusion. Mind control, hallucinogenic confusion, your eyes have such potential. So, I suggest you take the path of strengthening your spiritual power. In this way, whether you become a control-oriented battle soul master or an insight-oriented auxiliary soul master in the future, it will be a good choice. Xia spoke confidently to Fang Yuan, expressing her own views. Fang Yuan listened carefully and couldn't help but nod at Xia's opinion. As the bloodline boundary of the Uchiha clan, the Sharingan can continuously evolve and open its eyes through strong emotional stimulation. Its strength also depends on the number of Goyu. Spiritual power is undoubtedly the most indispensable for writing will eyes. Okay, then listen to Sister Xia's advice. Fang Yuan nodded and said, however, the soul beast that increases spiritual power. Although soul beasts with spiritual power as their main focus are rare, they are also abundant in species in the Starry Forest. We can slowly search for them without being impatient. Excuse me, Sister Xia. The more polite the child is, the more Xia likes it. At the same time, she ponders in her mind what kind of spiritual soul beast to find for Fang Yuan. In her cognition, there are not many soul beasts with strong spiritual power and good at spiritual attacks, and those soul beasts are either extremely powerful 1,000-year or 10,000-year soul beasts, or garbage that lasts for 10 years or decades. For thousands of years, there is no need to think about it. It is even more ridiculous to let a little guy who is naturally full of soul power and loves him absorb the white soul rings that have been around for 10 or several decades. So the decision of this soul beast is a bit troublesome. However, with Fang Yuan's sister's words, Xia also decided to help Fang Yuan put in a lot of effort and do her best. The three of them slowly searched in the Starry Forest and also discovered many soul beasts, but none of them were suitable for Fang Yuan. The only decent Qingxin purple bamboo, unfortunately only over 100 years old, was eventually abandoned by Fang Yuan. De Shiyu and Xiao Gang believe that the limit of the first soul ring is 423 years. Although in Fang Yuan's view, this viewpoint is undoubtedly nonsense. If there is really such a saying about the limit of soul rings, then why can San Kuai have the fourth ring for 10,000 years? In Fang Yuan's view, as long as there is a strong enough body, the first soul ring is not a problem, not to mention 400 or 500 years, even if it is 1,000 or 10,000 years. Fang Yuan has been exercising since childhood, and in order to obtain various divine skill secrets, he often goes to various places on a daily basis. Although this body bone is not comparable to the level of a normal person who practices Shen Gong with 3 cuts and small strokes. Now with the help of Archbishop Xia, Fang Yuan naturally hopes to find a suitable year for this first soul ring. Alas, spiritual soul beasts are indeed rare. It's been a long time now, and I haven't found a single one yet. Fang Yuan felt a bit depressed, but fortunately, both Xia and Su Yuntao were very patient and continued to search with Fang Yuan, which moved him a bit. A bishop like Xia must have had countless opportunities, and Su Yuntao, as the battle soul master responsible for awakening martial souls in these nearby villages, is no exception. It is said that after finishing the Emperor Soul Village, according to the process, the next step for Tauga is to go to the Holy Soul Village where Sango is located. Now it seems that we can only make our 3 cuts wait a little longer. Wait, where's Brother Tao? Fang Yuan was taken aback. He found that Su Yuntao, who had been following him and Xia, suddenly disappeared. Sister Xia, this. Don't worry. Upon realizing that Su Yuntao had disappeared, Xia's face also slightly changed, but soon she felt Su Yuntao's breath. To the east, about 500 meters away. The two of them exchanged a glance and hurried towards the east. Su Yuntao's breath is very chaotic. He should have entered a combat state. If there is a battle later, you must follow me closely and not leave my side. Xia spoke in a deep voice. I know, Sister Xia. Fang Yuan nodded obediently. He is basically a helpless little kid now, and if he really encounters something, he can only rely on Xia. Not long after, the two of them arrived to the east and also discovered Su Yuntao. There were no signs of combat around, and Su Yuntao was not injured either. He looked safe and sound, but his breath was not right. Brother Tao. Fang Yuan let out a soft cry, but Su Yuntao continued walking towards the bushes as if he had never heard of it before, as if he had lost his soul. Fang Yuan wanted to go up and call out to him, but before he could take any action, he suddenly felt like he smelled a fragrance, and then he began to uncontrollably walk towards the bushes. Fang Yuan took a step forward, and in a daze, his body trembled suddenly, and a wave of soul power stirred up waves on his body. When he lifted his head again, his eyes were already crimson, and Shangoyu's Sharingan couldn't help but spin in between. Stimulation and stimulation, martial soul protector. Sister Xia, be careful, it's a hallucination. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Accidental Absorption. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Accidental Absorption. Fang Yuan widened his eyes, and Shangoyu's riding will eyes rolled around, looking into the grass. In a faint moment, Fang Yuan seemed to see the fluffy creature that had always been pure white flash away. Sister Xia, there. Fang Yuan pointed towards the direction where the pure white creature was located, and Xia showed a serious expression. The martial soul was quietly possessed. The breath of the Soul King permeated, and Xia's eyes turned into erect pupils, with a hint of crimson scales covering her body, as if flames were swirling and boiling in it. At the same time, there are also 5 soul rings of yellow, purple, and black on the body. Beast Martial Soul, Flame Snake. First Soul Skill. Flame Ray. Xia made a decisive move and let out a soft drink. A thread of fire shot out of her mouth and landed on the grass. The flames surged, igniting the grass and illuminating the area. This time, Fang Yuan took a closer look. That is a pure white fox, with erect animal pupils that are silver in color. Overall, it looks like a white fox in snow. The only difference is that the tail of this fox seems to be a bit short. It's the silver moon fox. Xia looked at the silver moon fox and said in a deep voice, this kind of soul beast is not very aggressive, but it is extremely good at charm. Often in the wild, charm controls the enemy, causing them to fall into traps they create and devour them. Fox-like soul beasts, with an additional tail every 1,000 years, this silver moon fox's tail is only half the usual length, about 450 years old. Sister Xia, that's it. Fang Yuan took Su Yuntao, who had fallen into a coma, to the side while shouting loudly at Xia. Xia's eyebrows furrowed slightly. The limit of the first soul ring is 423 years, and the silver moon fox in front of me is obviously going beyond the limit. If it is used as a soul ring absorption, Want to run. The blazing fire burned the silver moon fox, and it instinctively struggled to escape and leave. Xia snorted lightly. Regardless of whether this soul ring could be absorbed by Fang Yuan or not, since this silver moon fox had set its sights on them, it would naturally have to pay a price. Xia leaped up, and a slender orange flame sprayed out in the direction where the silver moon fox was located. The intense heat twisted the air, and the orange flame was not intense, but rather like a line of fire, burning and sealing all the roots around the silver moon fox. Ah! The raging fire breaks the circuit, and the silver moon fox has nowhere to escape, only the option to fight. But it is not a soul beast that is good at fighting, and what's more, it is facing a level 50 or so Xia. After coming and going, the silver moon fox's beautiful pure white fur was burnt to the bone, and its breath became extremely weak, on the brink of death. Xia looked at the faint silver moon fox on the ground and reminded Fang Yuan in a deep voice, the maximum limit of an ordinary person's first soul ring is 423 years, and the age of this silver moon fox is at least 450 years, which has exceeded the limit for decades. Are you really prepared to absorb this silver moon fox? This. Fang Yuan hesitated a bit. To be honest, although he does not approve of the research on Deshur, he also has to admit that what Deshur studies is indeed a reasonable indicator for ordinary people. And he is indeed just an ordinary person. The soul ring limit of 423 years may really be the limit for him. If he forcibly absorbs soul rings that exceed this limit, will he explode and die? Fang Yuan looked at the silver moon fox on the ground, his riding wheel eyes spinning, his heart full of entanglement. Just as Fang Yuan hesitated, the almost dying silver moon fox suddenly raised its head and looked at Fang Yuan with a pair of silver vertical pupils filled with hatred, just in front of Fang Yuan's crimson Sharingan. With his eyes facing each other, Fang Yuan suddenly felt a sharp pain in his mind and instinctively hugged his head. Ah! Fang Yuan! Under Xia's stunned gaze, Fang Yuan suddenly let out a painful cry, and the dying silver moon fox's life dissipated. A yellow soul ring emerged from its body and floated towards Fang Yuan's body. But Fang Yuan, who was covering his head, only felt a splitting headache and an unprecedented tremendous pressure coming from all directions, making him unable to breathe. The yellow soul ring reached above Fang Yuan's head and then penetrated directly into his brain. Fang Yuan felt as if there was a raging fire and magma burning in his mind. A blazing energy rushed crazily into the body, starting from the top of the head and extending downwards, pouring into all four limbs and skeletons. Stabilize your mind and guard your martial soul. Although it is unknown how Fang Yuan completed the repair of the knife. But Xia understands that Fang Yuan is currently absorbing soul rings, and at such a critical moment, there must be no mistake. No matter how powerful the soul ring is, you must stay awake. Xia quickly said, only in this way can you better utilize the power of this soul ring in the future. Fang Yuan frowned tightly. At this moment, he seemed to be immersed in a blazing sea of fire, struggling in the midst of it. Intense pain continued to hit, but not long after, Fang Yuan felt his whole body relax, his eyes lit up, and he entered a grey and gloomy world. This world is incredibly dark, dimly lit, and the small body far away in this space is like gravel in an endless desert, infinitely small. Suddenly, a faint silver moon light flickered in this space, transforming into the shape of a silver moon fox. It bared its teeth and showed a ferocious expression towards Fang Yuan. Nemas, do you still have this kind of process? Fang Yuan was a bit panicked. Even Su Yuntao, who was in his 20s, was being played with by the silver moon fox in his hands. How could he possibly be his opponent? The silver moon fox had a fierce face and a face full of hatred, as it watched Fang Yuan's heart tremble. He watched helplessly as the silver moon fox leaped up and pounced towards him, its sharp claws seeming to tear and devour him. However, just as he was about to pounce on Fang Yuan, a crimson beam of light slashed through the pitch-black sky and splashed down. The silver moon fox was shrouded in the red light and immediately let out a cry of sorrow. Its entire body was like the darkness of dawn, disappearing without a trace. Fang Yuan raised his head in shock. I saw a crimson full moon hanging high in the sky above the once dim world. 2 ink-like jade ornaments hang on the full moon. Little one. Little one. Externally, the call of Xia brought Fang Yuan back to his senses. He opened his eyes and a yellow soul ring circled around him. Meanwhile, in those blood-red eyes, 2 jade pieces formed a sharp angle, opposing each other. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. First Soul Skill. Spiritual Impact. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 First Soul Skill. Spiritual Impact. How are you feeling now? The limit of the first soul ring is 423 years, but now, Fang Yuan has broken this record by absorbing a soul ring that is at least 450 years old. This situation makes Xia somewhat worried. Sister Xia, I'm fine, and I feel better than ever before. Fang Yuan took a deep breath and felt the changes in his body with his heart. He smiled and said, moreover, my soul power has increased by 2 levels, and now I have reached level 12. After 2 months of cultivation at the level of 3 cut card, he absorbed a mandala snake that had been around for over 400 years and then advanced to 3 levels. After awakening his martial soul, he absorbed it directly and also gained 2 levels of improvement. Fang Yuan is still very satisfied with this. It's okay, it's okay. Xia breathed a sigh of relief. A genius born with full soul power, as long as they can grow up smoothly, must be the material for the soul Douluo and the title Douluo. Therefore, in her opinion, having a higher or lower soul power is actually not a big deal, as long as there is no accident with the person. By the way, what is your first soul skill? Xia looked at Fang Yuan with some anticipation. My first soul skill, called Spirit Shock. Fang Yuan smiled at the corner of his mouth and was very satisfied with his first soul skill. Spiritual Shock. Xia was somewhat surprised. Spiritual soul beasts are extremely rare, and spiritual soul skills are even rarer. Unexpectedly, after absorbing the Silver Moon Fox, Fang Yuan directly obtained its most powerful talent and skill. Yes, it's just a mental shock. Fang Yuan nodded and explained, my first soul skill is to use spiritual power to impact the target, causing them to fall into a state of mental damage. Moreover, even when the target is in a state of mental impairment, I can still control their behavior to a certain extent, just like Taoga's situation just now. Fang Yuan looked around and saw Su Yuntao, who had been helped to the bottom of a big tree and was still in a coma, chuckling. With both eyes open and closed, the eyes of the double Goyu riding will have already opened. Looking at those bright red pupils, Xia felt a bit dazed. Under the movement of his mind, the yellow soul ring floated down on Fang Yuan's feet, shining brightly. The first soul skill. Spiritual Impact. Xia only saw the Sharingan in Fang Yuan's eyes constantly spinning, and an invisible force permeated out. The Su Yuntao, who was originally unconscious on the ground, slowly stood up and walked unsteadily towards her side. Good skill. Even a level 20 soul master can control it. Xia's face showed a look of amazement. As the Soul King, she immediately recognized the power of this soul skill at first glance. Leaving aside mental control, the power of mental impact alone is already quite impressive. Skills are instant and silent, unable to predict. Once hit, the threat is immense. Even if it is impossible to achieve a flash sale, it can definitely make the target appear in a dazed and stagnant state of unconsciousness. If it's okay to say it under normal circumstances, what if you eat it like this during battles? In Xia's mind, various methods of using mental shock suddenly came to mind. If Fang Yuan is only at level 12 and can control Su Yuntao, who is over level 20, then what if Fang Yuan grows up completely? It should be noted that the spiritual power of soul masters is not very strong, and many people only focus on cultivating physical and soul power during cultivation, often neglecting the aspect of spiritual power. Not to mention anything else, just in terms of spiritual power, as a soul king of over 50 levels, she is not much higher than Su Yuntao. That is to say, Fang Yuan's move can even affect her. You know, this is the first soul ring. The air conditioning in Xia was so strong that she even thought of the famous scene of Fang Yuan killing everyone in the future. Looking at the shocked Xia, Fang Yuan's face was also filled with a smile. In fact, he didn't say it all. His first soul skill is not just about transforming spiritual power into shockwaves. Spiritual impact should be considered as his active skill in the first soul skill, and in addition, he also has a passive skill. Spiritual power increased by 30%. The Sharingan relies on the power of the pupils, or in other words, the power of mental stimulation. For Fang Yuan, the improvement of mental power undoubtedly greatly enhances the power of the Sharingan. Moreover, this absorption of soul rings was a stroke of fate, allowing Fang Yuan's Sharingan to break through and reach the level of Air Goyu. The Air Goyu Sharingan is an evolutionary form of the single Goyu Sharingan, which not only possesses the insight of the single Goyu Sharingan, but also possesses the power of replication. Yes. As Tong Fang Yuan guessed, after becoming a martial soul, the Sharingan has formed an inexplicable fit with this world. Previously, he was like holding a treasure chest but without a key. At this moment, after Fang Yuan obtained the soul ring, the power hidden in the Sharingan finally lifted the seal in that moment. In addition to the soul skills carried by the first soul ring, the unique powers of insight and replication belonging to the Sharingan are also mastered by Fang Yuan. Xia looked at Fang Yuan, who was full of joy, and felt happy for him in her heart. Glancing at Su Yuntao beside him, he finally woke up from his coma. Since the soul ring has been absorbed, we should also go back. Okay, I'm really bothering Sister Xia today. Fang Yuan expressed sincere gratitude. The Martial Soul Hall has always been committed to helping the common people. Moreover, since you have agreed to join our Martial Soul Academy, your future will be a member of our Martial Soul Hall. As the Bishop of the Martial Soul Hall, helping you is just my duty, Xia smiled. Although it may seem like his job, Fang Yuan knows that Xia really wants to help him, or rather, the Martial Soul Hall really values these common geniuses. Otherwise, she would casually find a guard, or let Su Yuntao take him to obtain the soul ring. Why do you need to leave in person? What happened? Su Yuntao woke up quietly, looking at the two of them who were chatting happily, with a bewildered expression on their faces. It's okay. I've already obtained the soul ring. We should go back, Brother Tao. Ah. Have you already obtained the soul ring? Su Yuntao was a bit confused, and his consciousness was still searching for the soul beast. The spiritual impact of the Silver Moon Fox not only confused and controlled him, but even the memories during the period of being confused and controlled were also damaged and disappeared. This is a bit like the skills in some neon love action art films. Su Yuntao shook his head, feeling that he was still a bit groggy. But he still stood up and prepared to keep up with Xia from above. But just as he stood up, a strong and extremely bloody smell rushed towards him. The next moment, a piercing scream filled with extreme pain rang out in the jungle, followed by a blood shadow rushing towards Su Yuntao. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Evil Soul Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Evil Soul Master. The sudden change shocked Fang Yuan and Xia immensely. The speed of that blood light was too fast, even the Soul King level Xia didn't notice it in time, and Fang Yuan who opened the double Goyu only saw a blood-red light. By the time they realized it, it seemed a bit late. The blood-colored light and shadow revealed its form, and from the outside, it seemed to be a tiger-like soul beast. The huge body is 3 or 4 meters long, with no hair on its blood-red body. Instead, it is covered in layers of broken scales and protruding blood-flesh lumps. Sharp fangs and claws, as well as tearing open Su Yuntao's throat, the monster greedily licked and sucked, spraying blood from its throat. The strong claws pressed tightly against Su Yuntao's body, preventing him from struggling and affecting his eating. The sudden and tragic situation made Fang Yuan's face turn a bit pale, and he could even smell the smell of rust belonging to Su Yuntao's blood. Having been in this world for 6 years, although Fang Yuan boasted that he was already prepared to face this extraordinary world, he still felt panic when the scenes of life and death and slaughter truly appeared before his eyes. His pupils contracted, his legs and stomach trembled, and the bloody scene caught his eye. The constantly tempting smell of flesh and blood at the tip of his nose made his stomach churn. Tao, brother Tao. Recalling the kindness Su Yuntao showed to himself when he awakened his martial soul, Fang Yuan was stunned for a moment as he watched the remains of the body being continuously gnawed by the blood tiger on the ground. I didn't expect the bishop of the martial soul hall to personally lead a team to hunt soul beasts. A hoarse voice echoed as an old man in a black robe walked out of the jungle. His figure is not tall, even slightly hunched. The elderly face was covered in wrinkles, with dim yellow eyes and grayish-white hair, but the body was unexpectedly strong. He held a cane made of bone in his hand, like a crutch used to support his walking, or like a trainer training a stick. The old man walked slowly to the side of the monster, lightly tapping the bone stick in his hand on the ground. The terrifying monster looked at Su Yuntao, who had been bitten by him for the most part, and then obediently lay down on the ground. Are you? Xia pulled Fang Yuan down from behind with a solemn expression on her face. Looking at the body emitting a fishy and ominous aura, as well as the twisted and mutated body covered in a black robe, she already understood the identity of the newcomer in her heart. Evil Soul Master. The Sodot called Evil Soul Master refers to a soul master who uses some evil techniques and methods to cultivate. These soul masters assist themselves in cultivation by devouring soul power, soul rings, spiritual power, flesh and blood, soul, martial soul, etc., thereby maximizing their level. Unlike the revered true soul masters, evil soul masters are despised by the world. Whether it is the Star Do Empire, the Heavenly Do Empire, or the Martial Soul Hall, they are extremely despised and will be arrested and killed. Xia never expected that there would be an evil soul master hidden in the outer area of the Star Do forest. Moreover, it seems that soul power is not weak yet. Fang Yuan, you're ready to escape at any time, go seek help, I'll stop him. Xia's beautiful eyes froze, her martial soul possessed her decisively, and her face was resolute. It's a bit interesting. From the root, this kid must have just awakened his martial soul. The old man glanced at Xia. It seemed that the Soul King, who was over 50 levels, could not catch his attention. Instead, his gaze fell on Fang Yuan. 10 levels of soul power, this age has such soul power, and innate soul power is at least 8 or 9 levels. No wonder the bishop of the Martial Soul Hall could personally hunt soul beasts to obtain soul rings for him. Wait. It seemed that he had seen something, and the dark eyes of the old man in black suddenly became bright and generous, staring fixedly at Fang Yuan's green and immature face. Or rather, those crimson double-hooked jade are written on the wheel eyes. Surprisingly, it's a physical martial soul. Fang Yuan's heart trembled. The concept of ontology martial soul should only appear in Do Air. How could this evil soul master in front of him possibly know the existence of ontology martial soul? But the next moment, Fang Yuan understood. The black-robed evil soul master stared fixedly at Fang Yuan, even extending his right hand hidden under the black robe out of excitement. Rather than describing it as a hand, it is more appropriate to use claws to describe it. That right claw was pitch black and strong, with fine scales scattered all over it. Its sharp hook toe was like a sharp blade, capable of easily tearing apart everything. You should know that the evil soul master in front of you has not yet possessed a martial soul, which means that this hand is not a change brought about by the martial soul. But rather, the physical martial soul of the I-type is really precious, really precious. It seems that the heavens have felt pity for me, as I have been trapped in the Soul King mirror for too long. They want me to break through. Emotion Jia laughed and said, bloodthirsty skull, possessed. Yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black. 5 best matched soul rings emerged, with a terrifying aura that was no weaker than that of Xia, even several points stronger, making Xia's face solemn. Emotion's old and ugly face was full of laughter, even becoming somewhat twisted, like a demon. The 3rd soul ring on his body burst into light, condensing several blood-colored skulls and shooting towards Fang Yuan and Xia. The blood-colored skull did not move fast, but wherever it passed, it seemed like a locust passing through, and all the green plants and trees turned yellow and dim, even withering. The vitality in it was obviously completely consumed by the bloody skull. The 3rd soul skill. Flame-flowing light. Xia gave a coquettish scolding, and a stream of flames shot out of her mouth, trying to stop those bloody skeletons. The collision of 2 forces suddenly erupted into a loud explosion, with thick smoke billowing. I truly deserve to be the bishop of the martial soul hall, but at level 53, I have such strength. Amidst the thick smoke, a blood-red black shadow flickered past, and the ferocious beast's claws attacked Xia. Seattle didn't have time to react, so she could only cross her hands with her chest, but she was still punched away by Mozhen. Although Mo Shen is aging, with the support of his beast claws and his own level 59 soul power, both his strength and soul power are far superior to those of Xia. After just a few brief encounters between the 2 sides, Mo Shen pushed Xia back in embarrassment and kept dodging. This won't work. The combat power of the evil soul master is far superior to that of the ordinary soul master. However, after a confrontation, Xia knew that she was not an opponent and could only hold him down at most. It was impossible to defeat him. Fang Yuan, what are you still doing in a daze? Hurry up and go call for support. Want to run? The body martial soul that came to my door, I can't just let you slip away under my nose like this. Emotion sneered, his black eternal soul ring shining, and a blood claw condensed out of nowhere, heading straight towards Fang Yuan to grab it. Xia gritted her teeth and roared, revealing her only black eternal soul ring. The 5th soul skill. Snake Fire Dance. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Pursuit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Pursuit. Blood Claw attacked, trying to capture Fang Yuan. At the critical moment, Xia unleashed all her firepower and unleashed her only eternal soul skill. The crimson flame spirit snake suspended behind Xia, like a true martial soul. The surging soul power surprised Mo Shen, and he had no choice but to give up the opponent's pursuit and start seriously dealing with Jialing. Damn it! Fang Yuan's eyes were fixed on Xia, who was fighting against Mo Shen, and he wanted to go up and help, but he was completely powerless. His strength is too weak, so small that even the aftermath of the 2 fighting could easily take him away. At present, perhaps the only thing he can do is to call for support, as Xia said. Sister Xia, hold on, I'll be back soon. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth, didn't hesitate, just turned his head and ran away. Want to run? Mozhen wanted to pursue, but was tightly entangled by Xia. The combat power of Xia, who has activated the 5th soul skill, has skyrocketed to the point where even if his level is higher than Xia, he cannot solve it immediately. Humph, do you think if you can hold me back, that kid can be safe and sound? Emotion sneered, responding to Xia's attack while turning his head to crawl on the ground behind him, like a obedient dog's blood tiger giving the order. Go, bring that kid back to me, no matter what. Roar. The blood tiger let out an excited roar and jumped up in the direction of Fang Yuan, chasing after him. Xia wanted to stop, but all the flames sprayed out were stopped by Mozhen. How foolish of you to think of asking a 6-year-old, a little brat who has just awakened his martial soul, to seek help. Emotion released the bloody hand skeleton to counter the flame rays sprayed out by Xia. The blood tiger is a special variant cultivated by me using the millennium-old soul beast, the shadow black tiger. Although it is only 1,000 years old, its combat power may not be its opponent, even the soul lord or even the soul sect. Unfortunately, blood tiger has a cruel personality, so I shouldn't be able to get that kid's living body, but it doesn't matter. That kid's martial soul is his eyes. As long as his eyes are still there, it's the same for me to live or die. Emotion sneered as he released his soul technique, and a sky full of blood-colored skeletons resurfaced, attacking Xia. Xia gritted her teeth to resist, but her heart sank violently when she heard the term, Shadow Black Tiger. As the bishop of the martial soul temple, she has heard of this type of soul beast, which is the most ferocious and brutal hunter in the world of soul beasts. Especially their unique talent characteristics make them almost never miss when locking in prey. But now, she can only pray in her heart that Fang Yuan can smoothly escape the pursuit of the blood tiger. Come on, little one. The starry forest is very large, and in order to find his own soul beast, Fang Yuan has gone a long way with Xia and others. At this moment, this deep distance is like a deadly path for Fang Yuan, which is despairing. Fang Yuan tried his best to shuttle through the jungle, his small body running, and the light yellow soul ring shining under his feet. Although he did not release his soul skills, the increased soul power absorbed by the soul ring was constantly being called upon by him at this moment. Run faster. Hurry up. We're about to arrive. The closest human organization to here should be a temporary supply point to the east. Roar. With the blessing of soul power, Fang Yuan's speed continued to increase. However, before Fang Yuan could take a few steps, a terrifying tiger roar suddenly sounded in Fang Yuan's ear. The young man who was originally still rushing suddenly froze, and the image of Su Yuntao's death involuntarily came to mind. It seems like a sixth sense, or perhaps feeling the howling wind behind. Fang Yuan, who was rushing, forcefully stopped his running pace in an extremely twisted posture and rolled sideways towards the ground to the side. The roaring blood shadow almost brushed against the corner of his clothes and landed heavily on the ground in front of Fang Yuan. The place where the tiger palm fell left a huge pit on the ground. The immense power made Fang Yuan feel shivering. If this palm fell on him, let alone what serious injury it was, his thin arms and legs might have been slapped into meat sauce on the spot. Roar. With a single blow, the blood tiger did not feel embarrassed. Instead, it turned around and looked at Fang Yuan with its crimson, bloodthirsty eyes, revealing a playful expression of a hunter playing with its prey. It walked around Fang Yuan, constantly emitting a bloody aura that stimulated his nasal cavity. Fang Yuan even felt that his legs were weak, his legs and stomach were trembling, and he almost fainted from fear. No way. Biting his teeth on the tip of his tongue, the pain made Fang Yuan briefly forget his fear. Looking at the blood tiger constantly surrounding him in front of him, as if scrutinizing him, Fang Yuan forced himself to calm down and eat the piece of meat on his body first. The power of this blood tiger is extremely powerful, and Su Yuntao, who can instantly become a great soul master, indicates that this level of soul beast is not something one can fight against. The only possible way to survive now is to escape. But can it run through? Roar. The blood tiger did not give Fang Yuan too much time to think, and only the desperate cries and struggling resistance of its prey could make it feel happy. However, for Fang Yuan, who stood still and froze, this bloodthirsty beast seemed very dissatisfied. It decided to complete its master's task first before considering others. Even if Fang Yuan relied on his Sharingan, he had already responded at the moment when his muscles were trembling. I see it clearly. Fang Yuan's pupils contracted, and his two ink-black riding will eyes kept rotating, like stars in the dark night. Under the strong insight of the Sharingan, he was even able to see clearly the spittle splashing from the blood tiger's fierce pounce, opening its fangs and big mouth. Neck, right palm. Attack on the left. Dodge to the right. Almost in an instant, Fang Yuan had already made the best judgment in his mind, but before he could wriggle his body, the blood tiger had already pounced. Tiger teeth fell into the air, but the right palm that fell on Fang Yuan's left arm, which he couldn't dodge in time. Fang Yuan, who was still dodging in mid-air, felt a tremendous force and flew backwards under that force. Immediately after, before he realized what had happened, an indescribable excruciating pain hit his left arm, followed by a burst of blood stasis and black eyes. The power of the blood tiger's palm caused unimaginable damage to him. Although it did not directly kill him, the constant excruciating pain and the left arm that could only droop and its roots could not be lifted told him. It's broken. My left arm has already been broken. Fortunately, although the pain was unbearable, the intense pain constantly stimulated his mind. Without time to think, Fang Yuan almost climbed up from the ground, with his left arm drooping and his eyes fixed on the blood tiger. At the same time, his footsteps began to move slowly towards the rear. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Wretched and Terrifying Blood Tiger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The wretched and terrifying blood tiger Fang Yuan dared not turn around and run away, leaving his back unreservedly to a ferocious carnivorous soul beast, which was undoubtedly the most foolish behavior. In his past life, his father had taught him that when encountering an unexpected beast attack, he should never run away with his back to it. The best way to deal with it was to face it, use his power and eyes, and keep a close eye on it. Only in this way can the beast think that you are not his prey, but an equal hunter to him. Of course, the blood tiger is not an ordinary beast, and for him, Fang Yuan is a prey target that must be dealt with. The intimidation method of eye contact seems to have no effect, but even so, Fang Yuan dare not let the blood tiger disappear from his sight. The speed of the blood tiger is really too fast. Even though Fang Yuan can rely on his Sharingan to capture its movements, his body cannot keep up with its speed. It's like during the ninja exam, Sasa was able to rely on his Sharingan to understand Xiao Li's movements, but when his physical body couldn't keep up, he could still only passively get beaten. At that moment, just like this moment. At this moment, Fang Yuan is in such a situation. No, Sas couldn't keep up with Xiao Li. At most, he was beaten and beaten. Fang Yuanruo couldn't keep up with the movements of the blood tiger. I'm afraid it will be today next year, and the grass on the grave will float in the wind. Not right. Looking at the appearance of the blood tiger in front of him, Fang Yuan couldn't even be sure if he could still have a whole body after he gagged. With my speed, if I wait for this beast to take action and dodge, I will definitely not have time, resulting in the situation just now. Fang Yuan's eyes were fixed on the blood tiger, and the sharp pain emanating from his left arm crazily stimulated his mind. I must understand the rhythm of the animal's body before it takes action, in order to make predictions. Only in this way can I avoid its attack. Although the blood tiger is powerful, both its speed and strength are extremely terrifying. But fortunately, this guy's attack method is relatively single, with no other means besides sharp teeth and claws. Roar. The brutal roar once again emanated from the fangs of the blood tiger, and Fang Yuan stared intently at its every move. The muscles in the hind legs are swollen, the muscles in the forelimbs are tight, and the neck is bulging. Fang Yuan opened his mouth wide, and the sleeping trough in his mouth had not yet shouted out. He could only dodge and escape in an extremely embarrassed state. The next second, a blood-red energy ball spurted out of the tiger's mouth and landed directly at the position where Fang Yuan was originally located. The energy ball hit the ground and exploded, splattering out blood-red liquid. The ground and surrounding trees immediately made a rustling sound. In no time, the ground that made a sizzling sound turned charred black, and the big tree that was splashed on began to wither and decay as if its vitality had been deprived. If this attack falls on oneself, Fang Yuan suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Nima, you're a tiger full of muscles, how could you still use this cunning move? Fang Yuan cursed loudly, but the blood tiger let out a humanized roar of laughter and raised its head again, spitting out a blood-red energy ball towards Fang Yuan. 1 shot. Predict positioning. 2 rounds. Take a chance to dodge. 3 rounds. Crawling and rolling. Fang Yuan, covered in dirt, dust, and fallen leaves, climbed up from the ground panting heavily, breathing in the air. At this moment, he was already sweating profusely, and the constant soreness and loss of soul power in his body made him physically and mentally exhausted. Looking back at the blood tiger. This incredibly strong monster, with its mottled, twisted tiger face adorned with blood tumors and scales, surprisingly showed a mocking and playful expression. It is playing with Fang Yuan, like a house cat catching a mouse and not eating it immediately. Instead, it will play with it, making it unable to struggle and unable to escape before swallowing it. The blood tiger at this moment is like this. This is absolutely not going to work. Not to mention escaping to a temporary stronghold, in a few more attempts, I'm afraid I don't even have the strength to escape. You must think of a way, Fang Yuan. You must think of a way. Fang Yuan wore coarse clothing and activated his martial soul for a long time, consuming a lot of soul power and stamina, making his vision in front of him somewhat blurred. The pair of constantly rotating riding wheels looked at the blood tiger, and the blood tiger was also looking at Fang Yuan. Looking at each other. At this moment, the blood tiger seemed to have noticed that Fang Yuan was exhausted, and his playful thoughts gradually faded. After a tiger roar, the blood tiger no longer released the blood energy ball, but pounced directly towards Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth and dodged, but his tired body could no longer perfectly avoid the attack of the blood tiger. One mistake resulted in him being knocked out and even breaking 2 trees. The immense power prevented Fang Yuan from getting up again, and even his vitality began to disappear, leaving his entire body with no breath to escape. The blood tiger approached step by step and approached Fang Yuan, licking his flesh with a sharp tongue, as if checking Fang Yuan's current condition. Cold, dry, and lifeless. It's already dead. But did some of them die too quickly? There was a hint of doubt in the head of the blood tiger. In the past, when he hunted and killed his prey, the body of the prey often carried the residual warmth of life. Only those who had died for a period of time would be so cold. He licked the corpse 2 more bites away, not only stiff and lifeless, but also lacking a billion bit of biological meat flavor. The licking blood tiger took a bite, but what entered its mouth was not flesh and blood, but a mouthful of broken wood debris. A hint of confusion and struggle appeared in the beastly pupils filled with a fishy aura. The next moment, blood tiger felt a daze in the world before him. The guy who should have been hunted had inexplicably turned into a broken tree branch. What I chewed in my mouth, where was any sweet flesh and blood, was clearly a mouthful of crushed foam and scum. Roar. The blood tiger, who understood that he was being played with, roared up to the sky, and its blood-red eyes were filled with madness and violence. He slapped the dead wood in front of him into pieces of wood debris, and immediately noticed the residual blood mixed with soil on the ground. The grinning blood tiger lay on the ground sniffing, and in the next moment, it locked onto a position and chased towards the direction with the most intense smell. And in places it didn't notice. Among the dead wood debris it bit and even swallowed, there were several emerald green, seed-like things. Those emerald green seeds fell to the ground and soon merged into the ground. Rooting and sprouting, vines breaking through the soil. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Endless Situation, Escape Technique Outbreak. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Endless Situation, Escape Technique Outbreak. Fang Yuan was panting heavily and sweating profusely. Even if the soul power in the body has been completely exhausted, there is very little physical strength left, and every muscle in the body is sore. His eyelids drooped, and the exhausted pain and piercing pain from his body almost made Fang Yuan feel the possibility of falling at any moment. But he was still moving his steps and running constantly. Take 2 steps. Keep going. Almost, we're about to reach the supply station, almost. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth vigorously, constantly squeezing all the available forces in his body, and moving his steps. When he came again, although he had been sitting in the carriage practicing, he had seen the outer map of the Star Forest before entering it. With his riding will eyes, he can almost be called unforgettable. The memories in his mind tell him that as long as he walks a distance forward, he can reach a temporary supply station. As long as you get there, then you should be safe, Fang Yuan murmured softly, walking step by step towards the temporary supply station. Not long after, the plaque of the supply station appeared in Fang Yuan's sight. The tired boy breathed a sigh of relief before Fang could see the situation at the supply station from a distance. He was stunned on the spot. How could? Fang Yuan murmured incredulously. The supply station in front of me has completely lost its usual hustle and bustle. The station in Nuoda was completely silent, with the smell of blood and flesh permeating the air, and the torn and devastated corpses lying on the ground, indicating everything that happened at this moment. At the corner of the supply station, the blood tiger bit off the neck of the last living person, lifted its head, and gazed at Fang Yuan at the entrance, with a pair of beast eyes filled with a fierce expression. Roar! The blood tiger roared up to the sky, revealing its bloody mouth, and a burst of suction erupted from it. Countless blood was sucked out from those corpses, all converging into its mouth and being swallowed by it. The rich and fishy aura filled the entire world, while the aura of the blood tiger became even stronger. Looking at each other, Fang Yuan's eyes were filled with fear. He didn't know how the animal had arrived at the temporary station before him. I don't know how that beast knows where his destination is, maybe it just wants to wait for rabbits on his way and hunt for blood and food. But at this moment he seems to have nowhere to run. The blood tiger sniffed the ground lightly, intoxicated by the bloody and malevolent air. However, when it thought of the scene in front of it where the prey had just fooled it, the blood tiger's eyes were filled with anger. In his view, Fang Yuan was like fish on a sticky board, already in a state for him to slaughter, and it was actually played with by such a prey. Even if it weren't for one's unique talent and skills, one might even lose this prey. As soon as he thought about the consequences of releasing his prey, Blood Tiger instinctively shuddered. Its owner is not a bad person. Previously, many of its companions were eaten by the owner because they did not complete their tasks. The owner seems to place great importance on this prey, and if he cannot complete the task himself, the Blood Tiger lay prostrate on the ground, with a pair of beast eyes fixed on Fang Yuan, completely locking it in. The body, covered in blood tumors and inexplicable black scales, began to emit a ghostly light. The Blood Tiger suddenly began to tremble, and its entire body seemed to melt, merging into the shadow under its feet. The next moment, the Blood Tiger that merged into the shadow transformed into a blood-red glow, rushing towards Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan wanted to dodge, but his physical body, which had already reached its limit, could no longer support it to dodge the attack in front of him. He didn't even have time to move his body and could only protect his chest with his hands, squeezing out the last bit of soul power from his body to prevent it from being directly crushed. In the blink of an eye. Dong! With a muffled sound, Fang Yuan's body was directly knocked out. The thin and small body flew for more than 10 meters in mid-air, with almost completely twisted arms. After landing, it rolled on the ground for more than 10 times before finally crashing into a big tree and stopping. Wow, disgusting. There seemed to be a burst of flames in the chest, and one couldn't hold it back. Fang Yuan let out a whoosh of blood mixed with visceral fragments. There was a burning tearing sensation on his back, and his arms. No, at this moment Fang Yuan could no longer feel the presence of his arms, and the intense pain transmitted almost made him faint. Are you going to die? The young man's face turned pale, his eyes tightly closed, and there was no pain in every part of his body. He desperately wanted to open his eyes, but the dirty scab mixed with dust and blood blocked his view. However, he could still see the blood tiger that had knocked him away and walked towards him. That's it. Did it end like this? At this moment, as he was nearing death, he didn't have much fear in his heart, but his body was constantly trembling. Although the fractured arm could not be lifted, those hands were tightly grasping the gravel and soil on the ground, clenching into fists. His eyes were filled with unwillingness, his soul power had exhausted, but the Sharingan in his eyes continued to rotate. It's like a rusty gear being forcibly driven, as if there's an invisible force constantly pulling it, making it continue to rotate. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Fang Yuan suddenly widened his eyes, and vaguely, next to the two rotating Goyu, there seemed to be a trace of Goyu emerging, but ultimately turned into a phantom. However, the palm that was gripping the gravel and soil suddenly clenched, and an emerald green radiance burst out from his palm. The blood tiger, who was walking step by step, suddenly paused and stopped its footsteps. His body began to tremble uncontrollably, and a painful struggle appeared on his already deformed and ugly face. The blood tiger kept patting the ground with its paws, even rolling on the ground, as if there were countless ants crawling on his body. At the same time, a green light began to permeate his body. And accompanied by the emergence of emerald green light. The blood tiger let out a mournful cry of pain from its mouth, but within a few breaths, the sound suddenly came to an end, replaced by the tearing sound of its body. Countless vines and branches burst forth from the body of the blood tiger. Limbs, joints, abdomen, neck, head, pupils. The strongest dam, its interior is always fragile, and its strong body is the most perfect source of nutrition for Hua at this moment. Countless dense vines and branches burst out, almost in the blink of an eye. The young branches and buds of the trees began to grow wildly and irregularly, and countless thorns tore through the skin and surface of the body. But in just a few breaths, the blood tiger had disappeared and disappeared. Instead, it is a towering tree. And under the shade of the tree, the young man who had fainted. End of this chapter.